Here's how's everybody doing tonight? It's my second one today. I guess it's not night, evening. Man, I got to get some rest. So once again, coming back at you. So you know how we do it. Just gonna go over AWS service. You see it right there. KMS, which is the Key Management Service. That's what we're gonna hit today. While people are falling in, we're just gonna go over some videos I did this week. So that's what we usually do. Once again, I know football's on, so I'll have a few people follow, but definitely check me on the replay. Let me see, make sure I'm coming in. Okay. Checking myself on my YouTube stream. Sometimes still struggle streaming. I got to upgrade in 2023. Gonna get my upgrade on. So once again, gonna go over the videos I did this week while people are filing in. You know how we do it. If you got any questions on cybersecurity or tech, just put them in the chat. And once again, just hitting the videos I did this week as people file in. So power outage, South Carolina got hit. It was an update. I did the original video. Go check it out. Of course, it was vandalism. It was attack. So now they're trying to figure out if it's a domestic terrorist group, one-off group, or was it a nation state with nationals in U.S. soil, right? Spies, whatever that, whatever you want to call that, right? So FBI, all the three-letter agencies were on it, right? And I predicted that. So that's not a big deal. It's definitely a deal, though. The reason I said it's a big deal, you can actually take the whole United States grid down if you know what you're doing, right? If you go look at my longer video, we actually talked about that. And I'll show this at the end. I actually got a critical infrastructure playlist. And in there, I didn't even realize there was actually 4 grid videos in there. So go check out the long one. We talked about cascading. How would you take down a whole electric grid, right? If you go back, I'm 2008 New York, and that whole metropolitan went out, and I did a video on that. So it talks about cascading and how you would actually take down a power grid. Right? So check that out. Apple end-to-end encryption. Shout out to Apple. Their security's top notch. One of the top security companies. I did a video earlier this morning. I guess I didn't know they were controlling about 60% of the consumer market, where they believe 60% of people have an Apple product, right? So I was a little perplexed when I read that, but my favorite quote you're gonna learn today. So Apple with the end-to-end encryption, getting more secure. So San Francisco originally approved lethal robots. That's somebody getting disarmed on the bottom. But then people complain, robots could actually delete people on accident. So people was like, why would you give them lethal force when they can drop a smoke bomb, do some other things to incapacitate people without actually deleting them, right? So once again, go check that video out. So we did a live on this noon a day. Apple's getting sued for air tags, stalking. We went over the court papers. People believe Apple was negligent with that, right? So they're going to sue Apple, and we just went over the court documents. That was my my TLA, just going over the court documents. Pretty interesting. So it's going to be interesting to see how Apple responds to those papers, right? So I did an interview with a good friend of mine. I actually did a security review for him 15 years ago when he worked at another billion-dollar company. He's at Google. We just chopped it up about sales, technical sales, and different other things you could do in the tech space, right? So he had a hard stop, so we're actually going to bring him in, and we're actually going to talk about tech sales, engineering, other he's delivery, so different solution architects, the different things where you can get it paid in sales, just get paid in sales without actually being the salesman. Because when you're in a tech company, when you sell stuff, you bring a sales team with you, and I think each one of those individuals get a part of the sale, right? So we talked to my man about that, but we about to get AWS KMS, Key Management Service. So that's what we're about to hit. Once again, if you got any questions, just put them in the chat, tech or cybersecurity. We can go at it. If not, just check the replay and I am dragging. I got to get it together, right? Once again, we're going over AWS Key Management Service. So one of the things of security is encryption, and a big part of that is encryption at rest, right? When you got data in EBS, we're going to talk about RDS. When the data is at rest, it should be encrypted. So if somebody comes and steals your database, if they don't have the keys or can't get to your private key, they cannot read your data. All right, so we could talk about brute force and encryption another time, but just reading it, they wouldn't be able to read those files, right? If somebody stole those blocks from your backup without the keys, they would lay them down. They would not be able to read it. So that's what we're going to talk about, data at rest. So let's get it. Once again, AWS KMS, Key Management Service. I won't keep saying system, so let's get at it. So at the top, you got your key, you got your plain text key right there. Send it through. You're going to definitely get your encrypted data at the bottom, right? So you got your encryption key at the top. Send your plain text data through that key. What you get at the bottom, encrypted data. So that's basically KMS. But we're going to drill down. There's different keys, different encryption type, different ways to encrypt depending on what data you are encrypting. So we're going to hit different versions of that. So creation and control of cryptographic keys and protect your data. Create a KMS key. Your KMS key never leaves our FIPS 140 validated HSM, and we're going to talk about that. Unencrypted, you control who can access and use them. At the top, you see encrypted and decrypted data. So you can use it for sign and verify. You can use it to generate and export data keys, and you can verify MAC keys, right? So if you look at the top, automate monitoring and receiving alerts and audit who used which keys and which sources and when. Right. So you can actually use your logging, right? CloudTrail and CloudWatch are logging services. So if somebody's trying to hack your keys or get your keys, right, you can send alerts from your logging at the bottom. Then at the side is what can you encrypt with your KMS? And we're going to talk about different services. EC2s, which are EBS backed, right, is how you store data. EBS right there. S3, when you got store stuff in buckets, which are just a file system, right? It's an object file system. You can store text files, videos, right? But if somebody steals that data, right, if it's encrypted, they would have to also figure out how to steal your encryption keys to decrypt that, right? So most people know I do federal level security, and one of the things you got to do is encrypt data at rest, and that's what the KMS service is used for, right? Encryption at rest. So again, let's get it. So what is KMS? It gives you centralized control of cryptographic keys used to protect your data. The services integrate with other AWS services and make it easier to encrypt data you store in these services and control access to the keys that decrypt it. AWS is also integrated with AWS CloudTrail, which helps you audit who used which keys on which resources and when. AWS KMS help develops to more easily add encryption and digital signature functionality to their application code directly or by using the AWS SDK. AWS Encryption SDK supports AWS KMS as a key provider for your developers who need to encrypt and decrypt data locally within their application, right? That's just some common developers use, right, is encryption, right? Cool thing is using the services makes it a lot easier. Once again, they give you the SDK. You just call the function or procedure. It does it for you. You makes it a like one-stop shop, and that's why it's a service, right? So the KMS provides you with essential control over the lifecycle permission of your keys. You can create new keys wherever you want. You can control who manages keys separately from who can use them. As an alternative to use keys generated by AWS KMS, you can import keys from your own key management infrastructure. Use keys stored in your AWS CloudHSM cluster or keys outside AWS in your external key manager. You can choose automatic rotation of root keys generated in AWS KMS once per year without the need to re-encrypt previous encrypted data. The service will automatically keep older versions of the root key available to decrypt previously encrypted data. You can manage your root keys and audit their usage with the AWS Management Console or by the SDK or by the command line, right? So there's multiple ways to handle encryption and to do that, right? That's the cool part. And it makes it easier. One of the checks, and we're going to look at one of the compliance checks, is you need to rotate your keys once a year daily. Once a year, right? So then you got to keep track of the old keys, match them up when that data was actually encrypted so you can decrypt it. KMS makes all that stuff a lot easier than you manually keeping track of that and how to encrypt and re-encrypt data. So once again, let's go through it. You see it at the top. You got your plain text data. You got your data key that you use to encrypt it. You got your encryption algorithm. You encrypt the data. The encrypted data is in storage right there. Right, then you have your data key and your master key and your encryption. Then you can encrypt the data there. And of course, you can decrypt the data, right? But there's a couple ways to use keys to encrypt data and how it stores. And once again, the KMS handles all that for you, right? So what services does KMS work with? The Key Management Service integrates with AWS Service to encrypt data at rest or to facilitate signing and verification of using an AWS key. To protect data at rest, integrated AWS Service use envelope encryption, where a data key is used to encrypt data and itself encrypts under the KMS stored in the AWS KMS. For signing and verification, integrated with services use asymmetrical RSA ECS KMS key into AWS KMS, right? So once again, what's up, Dollar Washer? Glad you could join me. Just going over AWS KMS service, just talking a little AWS today. So once again, most services work with them. I just cut and paste a few at the bottom. So you see AppFlow, Ground Station, Guard Duty, Athena, CloudTrail at the top, Code Artifacts, Code Build, right? Because as your development team starts developing code, right, you want to encrypt that code so if somebody steals that code, they wouldn't be able to use it, right? You see a lot of companies. That's cool. I'm with it. So yeah. So you're going to use KMS to encrypt code, right? And we're going to get back into our DevOps. That's one of the hot things in IT, right? Which is creating development environments for your developers to use. And part of that, right? I do security for a living is keeping your code safe because a lot of times code is PI, right? That's intellectual property, right? Sorry, it's IP. That's intellectual property, right? Google's whole business is done on their search engine, right? Microsoft, if you still SQL Server database code, right? That's how they make their money. Oracle, I did Oracle forever, right? That IP is their code, right? So you want to sign it and encrypt it at rest. So hopefully somebody steal it, right? They wouldn't have the key to decrypt their code to steal their code base, right? So that's one things you're going to use in KMS, right? Is in your pipeline, your dev pipeline, your DevOps, and of course security. DevSecOps is going to make sure hopefully you're signing it, you're encrypting it wherever your code base is. In Oracle, you wrap it and it's encrypted. And how you keep your key so if the bad guy steals your code, they won't have the key to unencrypt it, right? And use your intellectual property. So Once again, part of that is audit monitoring, right? Who's using your keys? Who's trying to steal your keys? Which developers are encrypting and decrypting stuff? If you have CloudTrail enabled on your AWS account, each request you make with KMS is recorded in your log file. The log file is delivered to an Amazon simple storage service, which is S3 bucket, is a file system that you specify when you enable AWS CloudTrail. The information recorded includes details of user time, data, API action, and the key used when relevant. Right. So hopefully we never get hacked. But if you get hacked, part of that is they're gonna have to get your keys to decrypt it. So this hopefully will tell you who got your key and when they got your key and what time they got your key. Hopefully they wouldn't be able to steal your code, but this do, and you need to do forensics on who actually took your code, right, or took your keys to decrypt your intellectual property. You would lose CloudTrail with KMS to figure that out, right? And so monitoring, an important part of understanding the availability, state, and usage of your KMS, right? Key Management Service is maintaining the reliability, availability, and performance of your AWS solution. Collecting and monitoring data about all parts of your AWS solution will help you debug multi-point failures, start monitoring your KMS keys, however, create a monitoring plan, right? So on your KMS, what's your monitoring goals? Who will monitor it? How often will you monitor these resources? What tools you're using? Who would perform it? And who should be notified if something looks like somebody's trying to steal your keys, right? Does that go to the security team? Does that go to the operation team? Does that go to above teams, right? Security needs to do the review. Operations might need to shut something down because somebody's trying to steal some, right? But once again, monitoring your key managed services gives you insight on when that's trying to happen, right? So those are your key management systems, right? You can have a key on your S3, your EC2, your VPC, your IM. That stuff's going to get logged in the CloudTrail and CloudWatch. Then you can actually, once again, it's going to get stored in a bucket, right? Then Lambda is once that data gets put in CloudWatch, you can automate stuff, right? If you think your keys look like they're being hacked from an IP outside of the United States, right? You might just have a Lambda shut down your whole auto scaling group, shut down your database, right? Until you can figure out what happens or be more proactive into that, right? So that's some of the things where you get automation, then you can actually throw artificial intelligence and machine learning into that too, right? To learn what's going on in your environment, to make decisions off of people attacking your KMS system. Once again, your developers, you can tell them they're using keys for different services. They got customer managed keys and AWS has management keys. Developers create customer managed keys, customer managed master keys, and CMKs and AWS KMS, right? So a lot of times you do customer management keys because you want to rotate them when you want to rotate them. If I'm doing AWS management keys, right? AWS gonna rotate them when they want to. Once again, depending on what classification, if it's HIPAA, I do a little HIPAA, IRS Pub 1075, FISMA, DOD. So each one of those compliance has different times. You have to rotate your keys, right? So you're responsible for those. So those would actually be customer management keys, right? So most of the times you do customer managed keys. Once again, we just saw that you use your generate data key API using your customer managed keys. You take your plain text, run it through your encryption algorithm. Then you have encrypted data key, right? That's really what you want to get. Can you give a couple? Let's see what my man Dollar Wash said for me. Can you give an example of company that has this model? Every company. If you look at you can see Facebook, right? When you use Messenger, every messenger you put in there, you can scroll up and save. That's actually encrypted in their backend database, right? So if somebody try to steal your message out of Facebook/Meta, those messages are encrypted. If you Google that, they actually talk about what encryption they're using. A lot of people don't know if you go into your messenger, you can actually move money in there like Western Union. So any of those transactions you move, when you move money to somebody else, all that data that gets saved because you put in a PayPal account to link to it, all that data is encrypted, right? So if somebody tries to steal your PayPal information, your name, or your bank account associated with it, all of that data is encrypted. So let me know if that makes sense, Dollar. I think you said okay on that. So yeah, it happens, and most people just don't know it, right? Once again, I do federal work in any bank or large institution or even social media company because a lot of times they make their money on advertisements and they get paid with that. So all that data is encrypted because if it's ever stolen, right, you don't want somebody to be able to use that information. So once again, it's a fully managed service. As your use of encryption grows, which it will because everything should be encrypted, service automatically scales to meet your need. That's the beautiful thing about using AWS. All that's going to happen on the back end. You're not going to have to worry about it. It helps you manage thousands of KMS keys in your account and use them wherever you want to. It defines a default limit for a number of keys and request rate, but you can always increase a limit. Just send AWS and a limit increase, and they'll bump it up, right? KMS keys you create are ones that are created on your behalf by other AWS services, cannot be exported from the services. Therefore, AWS KMS takes responsibility for their durability to help verify that your keys, your data are highly available, right? So a lot of times I tell my smaller clients, just use AWS managed keys. They're going to take care of it for you. They're going to make sure it scales. They're going to handle all that heavy lifting for you, right? Because people don't realize when you're doing keys, there are servers involved. You're rotating keys. You got master keys, data keys, encryption keys. Amazon handles all that on the back end. You just tell your app, I want to use this key, right? And all that stuff happens in the background for you. And that's the beautiful thing about it, right? AWS/Amazon does that heavy lifting for you, right? So, and also part of that is encrypted data or digital signature workflows that move across regions for disaster recovery, high availability architecture, and globally distributed digital signatures. You can create KMS multi-region keys or set up interoperable keys with the same key material and can IDs that can be replicated into multiple regions, right? Big companies, they got a data center on the east and west coast. They got some in the middle because you want your data closest to your customers, right? So you're gonna be using multiple AWS regions. So you're gonna do that, right? You're gonna have keys in Ohio's a region, Oregon's a region, right? So each one of those regions, you're gonna have data keys for those resources you have in those regions, right? But sometimes you got to share data between those regions, right? So you got to share those keys, right? Once again, Amazon takes care of that for you on the back end. You just have to, it's called core, set your regions up and your accounts up, right? With the permissions to share your keys, right? Once again, AWS makes that pretty reasonable and pretty easy. Where in the past, you had to manually do that yourself, which was rough, right? So then this dot design that FIPS 142 dash there is just really government approved encryption and that are in the process of being validated to protect confidential integrity of the keys, right? We're going to get into CloudHSM. That's actually key hardware that if you need to have super secure stuff, you will use their CloudHSM for a charge, of course. So we're going to delve into that a little here shortly. But once again, we're just really focusing on KMS as a key management service to encrypt data at rest, right? And we got a couple of slides coming on that's going to drill down into that, right? So you can start using KMS in all your products. And so that's part of KMS where you have your certificates and your virtual keys. It's actually a hardware platform that you could pay, so only your keys are in your cloud HSM. When you use the default managed, Amazon's got your keys with every other company in that region, right? Some compliances like that, some compliances don't, right? So if you need your own hardware for your own keys, you can use AWS Cloud Infrastructure. Then once again, this is your virtual private cloud. You see it at the bottom right there. You have your application and your client in there using your keys for your data and your services, right? So HMAC is a web service. It's a hash map message authentication code. It's really for the developers. Don't worry about it. It's FIPS 140 validated hardware security modules, our cryptographic building blocks that incorporate secret key material with the hash function to create a unique keys. It's an algorithm used to conform to industry standards, RFC 2140. You can't use it in China at all. Let me unhide that. That's one thing when you do federal security. Some things you gotta be careful because you can't export them to foreign countries, right? So, um, just long story short, it's just a web service encryption once again at rest for keys that AWS will help you facilitate, right? When you use it. Now, the big deal is too is rotating your keys. As you see at the top, you can enable automatic key rotation for existing KMS. When you enable automatic key rotation for your KMS keys, KMS generates new cryptographic material for your keys. It saves all your previous version of cryptographic material in perpetuity so you can decrypt your data. You can delete your old keys and can rotate them. So there's a check coming up for that. And basically, you have your keys in January, you rotate them in February, right? Then you rotate them again in March. Usually, you rotate them once a year, right? The reason you do that a lot of times is developers might upload their keys somewhere they wasn't supposed to. A lot of times people were uploading keys and read it. I don't know why on accident. So if somebody lose their keys or put them in a public forum, if you rotate them every year, if somebody actually does that, your keys are only out there for 1 year, right? If somebody came across them, right? So that's why you rotate them, every year. The reason why you don't do them every day or every month like this is you got to keep track of those keys, because if I encrypt some data in January and I need to decrypt it, I got to come up with my January keys to crypt that data. So, right, I got to keep all those keys for perpetuity, right? Forever, long story short. A lot of times what people do is they decrypt it, then re-encrypt it with February's, then I don't need to keep January keys because, right, I unencrypted and use the new key to encrypt it, right? So a lot of people do that depending on the volume of data and how that your services work with the KMS service, right? So that's one of the things you can actually do. So let's see NIST, right? This is actually a security check. A lot of people know I do compliance for a living. So I just put a couple security checks. So you see it at the top. Support the management system accounting using this. You have to put it in red. You have to access keys rotated. The credentials are audited for authorized devices, users, and process by ensuring keys are rotated as per organizational policy. Most of those policies are a year. Change the access keys on a regular schedule is a security best practice. It shortened the period an access key is active and reduce the business impact if the keys are compromised. These rules are required access key rotation. This company is doing it every 90 days, right? So the actual value should reflect your organizational policies, right? So a lot of companies do it every 90 days. If it's machine to machine, they do it once a year, right? So once again, that's a security check. And I think I put one more on there. Here's another one: produce and control systematic cryptographic key rotation. It's used for CMK backing key rotation. Enable key rotation. Ensure that keys are rotated once that they have reached the end of their cryptographic period. Right. So the CMK, Once again, FIPS validated, NSA approved. Right, so that's the security check. Right, NIST, I do NIST for listen, so it's telling you you need to rotate your keys. Once again, machine is usually a year. No problem, Dollar Wash. I appreciate it. Check me on the replay if you get a little time. Once again, all the compliances that use this service: SOC 1, 2, and 3, PCI DS, which is credit card security, FIPS, which is NIST government security, FedRAMP, and HIPAA, right? So this services can be used with any of those compliances, right? So when you do stuff for government agencies, they tell you if that service can be used for that type of compliance. Once again, this can be used pretty much with anything. It's been approved: FedRAMP, HIPAA, PCI DS, right, which is credit cards. You can do your own custom key store. Logical key store with KMS is by HSM that you're owned and managed outside of AWS KMS. Custom key stores combine the convenience and comprehensive key management interface with the ability to own and control the devices where the key material and operation occurs. As a result, you assume more responsibility for the availability and durability of keys and for the operation of your HSM, and keys offer two types of that, right? So basically, you manage your own keys. If you lose it, you're toast, though, right? So I don't recommend people doing this unless they have some data that's top security, nuclear or something. I'm trying to think of when I would recommend somebody manage their keys. You can have customer managed keys, but manage them up in AWS, right? So there's a couple ways to do that. So once again, this is the KMS. You got your cloud store. You have your AWS administrator, monitors the health of your HSM, then the users who use it, controls keys, local HMS users, and cryptographic operators, right? So you can set this up in 2 or 3 different job roles or responsibilities, right? How that works. So just KMS just give you different level of security job functions, right? Which is typical when you're dealing with Amazon because they're working with big companies, right? So you could do keys from your console or the command line, or you can manage them from your application and SDK. You can actually insert them, create them new, do the lifestyle of your, the life cycle of your CloudHSM, right? Which is a single tenant, which will be you in your hardware. And once again, as people use them, delete them, create them, use them in apps, I can log that information into CloudTrail and CloudWatch, right? So if something happens or I need to do an audit, I have who touched what in these logs, right? So definitely got to monitor and log stuff. So the different things: EBS for your EC2 is where you store your data. Once again, you can use a key store. You want anything stored in your EC2, Linux or Windows, you want their data to be encrypted. That's the standard security check for anything, right? So that's how that would actually happen. So your database, once again, get your key store, get your customer managed, right? Because when you save data in data blocks, if somebody steals your data blocks or your backup, you want that data to be encrypted, right? Once again, KMS is the service for you. Same thing with Lambda, right? Which is basically where you store code at for serverless, all right? So you encrypt it. So when serverless comes up, if somebody for some reason got that Lambda or got that code off of there, which is tough, right? Because you're talking about cracking AWS. But if they did, if they couldn't get to your keys, they wouldn't be able to read your Lambda data, right? And that's what we're talking about: encryption at rest, locking down your services and locking down your code, right? Which a lot of times that's your IP of your organization, right? Intellectual property. Right. So once again, it's a small service. I just wanted to touch on that. Once again, I've been studying for my AWS. That was my 2022 goal. So trying to end strong and learning about the cloud. My cloud of choice, of course, is AWS. I interviewed my man. He's a Google architect guy. So each cloud, I think you just need to pick a cloud. I'm the Google, AWS, Azure, any of the big dogs will work. Then right underneath there, you have Salesforce, Oracle, right? Rackspace, who just has some issues with some hackers, right? But just pick a cloud. That's the future. That's where you want to be at, right? And part of the future is understanding different services and how they work together, right? So once again, it was just a smaller service. Me, studying for my cert, so I would just start, I should start talking on different services so I can become more comfortable with them. And two is once again, I do compliance, so I do a lot of security reviews on different clouds, right? So for me to do a decent security review, I need to understand services that run on those clouds. I'm probably not probably I am going to be multi-cloud in the future, but you got to start with one. So the one I started with I thought was the biggest, and the one I thought where I'm a consultant at, what I see used more a lot, which was AWS, right? They were the 800-pound gorilla. I dropped the link if anybody want to come up. Like I said, I know this is kind of a dry subject. I need to do a little better, but once again, I was finishing up 2022 doing AWS. 2023, we're gonna switch over to we're gonna do AWS during the weekend, but then I think I'm gonna switch my Sunday classes over when I start studying for the CISSP. Right? I'm a little disappointed because I took that cert 15 years ago, so I need to do a better job of doing that. Once again, if you got any questions, just drop them in the chat. IT or cybersecurity, we can chop it up. I know I got a few new subs. Long story. Professor Black Ops. I've been in IT for 30 plus years. I did my first internship on a mainframe in 1988. I worked for the Department of Defense for 10 years. I worked with the IRS for another 10, doing different things in cybersecurity, everything from compliance to development to web servers, app servers. I did Oracle for 10 years before that. So I just wanted to come to YouTube to help people make my presence known. And there's a lot of people trying to get into the game to assist them. A lot of people send people to talk to me, from a cybersecurity perspective. So I always enjoy doing that. So my channel is usually cyber first, branching off into technology. Cyber touches everything from physical to cybersecurity to SOC, Security Operations Center, to compliance, GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, artificial intelligence and machine learning. That's the future. We do talk about some big society things, mass surveillance. We're going to start talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital redlining. When you have code that people can't see, right? Algorithms, shout out to YouTube, that you don't know how it works, right? Sometimes it works at the disadvantages of other people, right? So we're going to touch on those, some big societal issues. I'm actually going to do a book review. I think the first one I'm going to do is going to be The Weapons of Mass Destruction. I'm hoping to do that Tuesday at 10. So I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do that, actually. So just a few things my channel said. And once again, Professor Black Ops, you can always reach out to me. I jump and chat with people, Zoom. A lot of times I use Restream. Of course, we just don't hit the go live button, but we can chat it up. It's just like Zoom. I call it my poor man Zoom, right? We can chat it up on Restream. If you had any security questions, trying to get in the industry. And a lot of times too is I'll give you my 2 cents, but then I'll send you to other people that I respect in this sector that's maybe a little more versed in whatever you ask me. Like a lot of people ask me help desk. Should they do help desk? I say, yeah, I'm gonna send you to my man Kev Tech, right? Career advice, depending on where you at, give you Black Heights, textual chatter, trying to get started up, cybersecurity, maybe hit you with a little Tech G, Linux. I'm gonna hit you with Keep It Techie, Women in Linux. They cover a lot of things. So there's a lot of good people, master ITs in the house. So I probably after you give my 2 cents and send you to somebody else, because I want you to get all information from different point of views. most people know I'm an old curmudgeon, so I'll be 55 this year. So I'm giving you 55-year-old man game, right? Sometimes that's not as nimble that you need as a young man game, right? I might send you B2B. He 26. My son's older than B2B, but he gonna give you that young man's perspective in IT, right? Then Max the Million, young, super bright dude. I think he's 22, right? But a brilliant coder. Shout out to Citizen Lou. Shout out to Savage Scientist. Right, there's a lot of people in this space that can help you out. But once again, I just want to hit on the key management services. Check out my videos. I do a ton of different videos. I think I have over 100 where it's just talking about different subjects. I have playlists. Oh, JM in the house. See what JM got from. I enjoy Linux better. Is it necessary to learn PowerShell, or is it same as using CMD? I enjoy Linux. Is it necessary to learn PowerShell? Is it the same? I think it's not necessary. PowerShell, right? So Linux, my favorite operating system. That's the only thing I would do back end web server. I'm always gonna run on Linux. I think Linux is more secure than Windows. Personal issue with me. I think whatever you use, you need to learn a scripting language. So I'm old, so if I'm Linux, I probably cut on Corn Shell because that's what I've been doing for 20 years. And I'm since I've been doing AWS with Python with their Boto function framework, you can actually start EC2. So my future scripting language, JM, on Linux, I think I'm gonna focus on EC2, which is Amazon Linux 2. My scripting language, which you need to figure out which scripting language is going to do, is Python because it's super popular with the Boto functions with there. Because you can start up EC2s, create VPCs. So I think that's what Amazon kind of pushed for one of their frameworks. They got a few, but I think you just need to learn a scripting language, Jam. Whatever that is. PowerShell is cool. I'd use a lot of System Manager with inside AWS. Because if you're gonna deal with 100, you're just not gonna go on one script. So their scripting language is PowerShell, right? So you can do that across Linux and say, I want to run this same command on these 50 Linux boxes, and you can patch them, install systems agents or whatever you want to install using System Manager. But you got to pick your shell script on the back end. So I just say, let me know if that makes sense, Jam. Basically, you just need to pick which scripting you want to use for that particular thing and just get decent at it, right? Because when you work for big companies, you just can't log in. If you got 100 EC2s or VMs, you're not gonna log into 100 of them individually, right? You're gonna script that stuff to run a bash script on all those, right? So to do that, of course, they all got to have all the same versions and the same stuff. And hopefully you'll have them identical. And that way you can tag them in just one scripts, right? I got this, my web server tag, run this on all my web servers. This is my app server tag, run this on all that, right? So you want to script that up. So James, you just got to pick what scripting language you want to be at and be great at it. That's all. Got to outwork the work. That's what Deion Sanders was saying. Let me I laugh, I'm chuckling. It's the same thing as writing code, but I'm old school. When you write code, I'm thinking I'm writing an application, right? I'm writing this formal thing that I'm gonna put in production. Like when I talk about scripting, I might say it might be scripting to me is something on the 30 lines, and I'm doing something on a box. So that's why I say scripting. I'm gonna start which I did this morning. I installed CloudWatch Agent on 10 Linux boxes, right? That was 4 lines of code, right? That's scripting, JM. I'm not coding it. I didn't check that in anywhere, right? I just said I need to install this agent. So I wrote 10 lines of code and I ran it on 10 boxes, right? I wouldn't call that coding, I call that scripting, right? The difference between coding and scripting for me, when you code, I'm writing an application. I got requirements. I got it checked in. I'm gonna get peer review. When I script something, it could be something I'm gonna throw away. Once again, I need to write. I was putting the CloudWatch agent on 10 boxes. I wrote probably 10 lines of script. I ran it, right? I didn't even save it, right? I checked it, made sure it worked. I ran the script, right? And it's not something I probably would save. I'm gonna save it for me, but I wouldn't formally check in it. So I think that's the difference between scripting and coding, right? Let me know if that makes sense, Jam. I was code to me is when I write a business application. Since I work for a company and when I write code, I got requirements, right? I'm just not randomly writing code, right? I got a requirement that says you need to do this. I done gave an hours estimate. A lot of times as an admin or DevOps guy, I'm writing scripts to build stuff right on boxes, right? It says, okay, I need to build this. My code says I need to build these boxes to run, but that code isn't, part of something I need to check in and maintain. So once again, let me know if that makes sense, JM. That's the difference for me from scripting and coding, right? Let's see, Jay. Oh, okay. So it's like coding at small scale, more. Yep. Definitely, definitely. Definitely. Like I said, when you say code to me, because I wrote business apps, right? A code to me means I'm writing formal business applications, right? Which means I gotta put my time on it. Somebody's gave me a business requirement to write this code. I got it in version of code. When I'm scripting, it's like, oh, I need to get this agents on these 20 boxes. Okay, let me write that. Boom, the agents is on the box, right? I said I put the agents on the box, but I usually don't keep that script code, right? Or a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm gonna run service manager, and the service manager it says run these scripts to update to a new version of CloudWatch agent, right? So yeah, so that's really what it is. Now, granted, if you learn how to code, if you know how to code, that makes it easier for you to script. Shout out to Dewan Lightfoot was talking about that when he started doing Cisco work. Because when he started doing DevOps, he had to start scripting, but he never coded before, right? So that was kind of a jump for him. Right. I started off developing. So when I write script, that's not a huge jump for me. Do you need to know scripting as a help desk? No, nope. No. Help desk a lot of times too. Let me rewind that back a little bit. There's three levels of help desk. This is more of a tech question, JM. My point of view is help desk has three levels. Level one, remember, you just got a script, you're trying to do stuff. Level three might do a little scripting, but even at that level, I don't think they script a lot. Usually your admins are scripting, people your Linux admins are script. Of course, your cloud DevOps are going to script. DBAs are going to script. Your backend SMEs that are building those type, they're going to script, right? Because if I'm a DBA, sometime I might have to create 100 users, right, or 100 test users. I'm not going to do that manually, right? I'm going to script that up. Right. Anything I do on scale, JM as an admin, I'm gonna script that up. Now, granted, I've actually logged into 100 VMs and had to do something manually, but you don't want to do that, Jam. You would never get done. Right. So if you like, once again, I'm trying to get to my DevOps. If I got to build 20 VPCs, the same thing, because I got 20 different development team at a large company. I used to work at a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company. They had 20 development teams. So if I had to do each one of those environments by hand, JM, I'm never going to get done, man. So you got to figure out how to script that up. And a lot of times those environments are set up the same, right? You set them up the same. They're going to development different, but you're going to set them up. I'm gonna give them a VM. I'm gonna give them a web server. I'm gonna give them an application server, and I'm gonna give them a small database. Right? I gotta set that up 20 times. Right? So I'm not doing that. So I can use Ansible. I can use Terraform. I can use CloudFormation. Those are templates, but basically it's scripting across each one of those environments so you can replicate it. Do you create like small functions when you're scripting? Is PowerShell writing style? Yep, you do, JM. If you're good, I've seen people write spaghetti code, but now if you're one of the better ones, because a lot of times you're going to reuse those small scripts, right? And you're just going to use them in a different environment. But let's say in AWS, I did something in Oregon and I did something in Cali and I did something in Spain, right? I need to pipe in what region it is. So my function is going to prompt me for the region, but the rest of those scripts are going to be the same thing, right? So the function is going to ask me what region you're in. I'm going to say US East 1, which is Virginia. I do that. The rest of the script's the same. Okay, do that. It's going to create everything in that region. Once again, you're going to get your web server, app server, and database. Oh, I want a US2. That's Ohio region. Build it, right? So my function's prompting me for what region, right? But that's when you're getting good, right? You're not hard coding stuff, JM, right? But but that's baby steps. Let's say the first one I hard coded, I had to go in there and change it, right? But I'm not building everything out, but I got to change like 10 things inside the script. Then when you get good, your script prompts you, right? And you change it. Then when you get better, you can put that stuff in an array. Your scripts read the array and build each 20 of them, right? You just put what regions you want in them, right? So there's baby steps to this, JM. And as you get good, your code gets better, right? Even at my age, 55, and I'm gonna have him on. This dude is, I think, one of the top guys in the Midwest. He's 10 years older than me, and I learn a lot. He'd be nitpicky. He'd be like, "You can't do the code like that." I'm like, "But it works," right? So it's levels to this, JM. So you can always get it better, right? And that's why I like to work with smart people, and I'm gonna start having on my channel. That forces you to get better, right? Yep, you looping. I can see that our for loops coming in these scripts since you're trying to do the same. Oh yeah. Yeah, you always gonna loop because a lot of times is, once again, if I'm in a region and I need to create 50 test users and they said call it test user 1 through 50, I'm gonna put test, then I'm gonna let it loop 1. It's gonna put appendix 1 on there, 2, 3, 4, right? I can create 50 users. I'm gonna loop through them, JM. I'm gonna say, okay, my base is test, concatenate the loop I for 1, go through 50 times. It's gonna concatenate that 1 into test. It's gonna loop and create me 50 users, JM. That's definitely one about you. Always gonna loop. You're gonna loop for a while and you're gonna figure out how to stop it. So I would go loop I 1 through 50. That I will be 1. I'm gonna pin that to my test. So it's gonna say test 1. And I can create 50 users doing a loop, JM. I'm not gonna do that manually. So yeah, you're gonna loop it. All those basic functions, you always gonna need those, JM. I've been using those for 40 years. Now, I've been in the game for about 33, but I've been using them all about 30. Okay, so I think I know how to script and didn't even, you scripting and that's one thing we're gonna start doing more on my channel is I think most people doing it, they just don't know how to do it professionally, right? You got the script, so and that's a good project. What we just said, if I need to create an environment, create 50 test users, and I need to script it up, what would that look like in real life, right? How would I do it, right? I would call system manager. I would call a shell script. In that shell script, we would loop through tests. I mean, obviously you understand what that is. Concatenate the I to the test. It's gonna go through 1 through 50. I created 50 users. I could create a password of whatever. We have some template where it take whatever their 0, 1 is and some numbers in the front. So as soon as they log in, they would have to change them, right? And I could create 50 test users. As soon as they log in, it would force to change them, right? I got their MFA, so it would, link it to their phone so they make sure nobody steal them. But yeah, JM, so that's when you get to the next level because for a small company, you can do this manually, but once you get some size, you can't do it manually. And that's really the benefit of AWS. You can scale up to what, people talking about running 100 EC2s, right? So if I got 100 EC2s and they got Tomcat on them for Java, how do I go back and say, okay, I need to update Tomcat on all these EC2 Linux tools? I'm not going to do that manually, right, JM? I got to figure out how to script that up, right? So that's kind of what I've been doing on my labs and trying to get better and logging. And part of that too, like we talked about, how to use KMS to encrypt those values. But now, JM, that's really what scripting is, right? You don't want to manually create stuff. And as you work for larger organization, and two is when you do manual stuff, you're going to make a human mistake where if I script that up and I tested it and I ran this for the 30th time, your error rate's going to be a lot smaller than if you manually, I got to create this button. I got to click on this. I got to go to the Audit scaling group. I got to add this image, right? So you want to script that up. And once you run your scripts, you testing them out. Because if you make a mistake, somebody's going to tell you, you update your script. So after a while, you know they're good. The system administrator usually start a help desk, or is it possible to start in as a system admin, right? Educate. Yeah, I've seen guys start in without help desk. Most the only caveat to that, Jan, which is not a huge caveat. Now, let me read your question. Make sure I do. System administrators usually start as help desk, or is it possible to start in as a system admin with the right education or search? Yeah, I've seen guys, but I'm old, so most of the guys I know had bachelor degrees from major universities, so they were actually doing that, right? So yeah, if you get, or two is I've seen that's what you need to ask your boot camp. I've seen some companies that had boot camps. They had contracts with government agencies. So people that passed their boot camp, they sprinkled them in with senior guys. We had a couple of junior guys that were messing up. So we had to get on them. We had to get on them, JM. So, but no, I've seen them. I've seen them straight with the right education and cert. Two is, and I keep bringing this up, and I need to start doing that. Actually, with Keep It Techie is, we know what a DBA needs to do. We know what a web admin needs to do. We can give you enough assignments so you can do a portfolio, so you can show your portfolio, and you should be able to get in at least a junior level job if your portfolio show that as a SQL Server DBA, Oracle DBA, or AWS Postgres RDS DBA inside AWS, right? Yeah, I think that's good. I think since you probably don't have as much experience in that, you're gonna need to show your portfolio so you can speak to that and the assignments you were given on your portfolio to say, I know how to create users. I'm just talking about Linux admin, right? I've got a Linux administrator I trust, the best one in the Midwest, right? So when you do that, what's the next level of that? I know how to harden that. I know how to lock that down. I know for a HIPAA, this is how I need to do this server, right? You're a hospital. I know how to configure this server so you can pass your HIPAA certification. I'm that good, right? See, but I don't remember learning scripting in CompTIA was mostly Active Directory. You're not gonna learn scripting in most of those classes because that's basic. I think a lot of those CompTIA stuff, and even when I do AWS, they give you the basics, right? I've got four. I got 4 AWS certs. I didn't script any. I didn't script in any of those, JM. I know I'm gonna need to know the script because I worked in professional settings, right? Because usually when you get your cert, they give you 1 server, 3 servers. You can manually do that, but when you're on site, like I worked at DoD, we had 400 VMs. We had 400 VMs back then, JM. You cannot do that manually. I had 100 web servers, and I think I had 80 app servers with 3 dudes. So we were humping, man. we were trying to do that stuff manually. So we were trying to do that stuff manually. You just can't do that. So I think that's where those certs miss out. Shout out to the the triple X trying to get us. Now, James, I think that's the second level cert. Now, I don't think certs they talk about it in the upper level certs, CYSA, the big dog cert, but those entry level certs or even medium certs, they say this is how you configure a Linux box, right? This is how you do a server, but they don't talk about doing it at scale, JM. And I think that's what we're missing. Then when you interview, that's the questions they're gonna ask you is how you scale on that. Shout out to Women's Linux. You know, she's always talking about Ansible and Terraform, right? I'm Cloud Formation, so I understand that I'm gonna need to do this at scale, right? I'm trying to get Black Hikes money, so I'm gonna need to be able to do 100 EC2s at one time, right? And two is how do I patch them, right? In long story short, inside AWS, how do I set up system manager? How do I do a maintenance window? How do I do a patching, right? We all got a patch. There's patch Tuesday for Wednesday. We know there's patching. There's the bad guys. So how do you do that on scale, right? what's the H key file in Windows? Is that equivalent to KMS file? I would say so. I would say so. I'm not a big Windows guy though, JL. So, but yeah, that H key for Windows for me is I've seen it used for encryption. It's how they keep track of stuff. I think KMS though is usually more of an encrypted service, so you can actually do different encryption types. I think the H key file for Windows is just what they use. In KMS, I can use HMAC. I can use I'm trying to think. AS 256. I think I could use a different key rotations inside that. I think H key file in Windows is that's their stuff, and that's how you can use. KMS has a plethora of different keys, different rotation schedule. I can hook it to a Lambda and do some automation. I don't think I could do any of that with H key and Windows file, but I'm not the Windows guy, JM. I'm a strictly, I ain't gonna say strictly a Linux guy, but I make most of my money on the Linux world. Um, Oracle and Java specifically runs better on Linux, so that's what I focused on most of my career. So when I do Windows, I give that to my colleague. He handles that. but no, I think that's their thing, and I think KMS is a service, so you get different things you can do with that encryption key service. So I've just actually started doing some labs with KMS. Once again, I'm hoping to start showing them. I was struggling with the KMS. A lot of times I just click a button and you use KMS with the AWS managed keys, and they take care of all that in the background. Yep. Shout out to Black Dub. Yeah, I'm a Linux guy. Like I said, I'm getting better at Windows. Once again, I had a colleague. I get so much Linux compliance work, right? So that's kind of my bailiwick, and really how I make my money is in that world. So but don't get me wrong, Windows has a ton of clients, and their database and software, especially over the last year, hardware is just getting so much better now that you big stuff you can used to only run on Oracle, you can get to scale on SQL Server. Hardware is so much better now. Hell, you can get 32 cores and split it up inside AWS. So a lot of people run a ton of Windows, right? So I always kind of pick a stack. I tell people pick a stack and be good with it. My stack, which been up years ago, and I'm hoping to get back into it, was Linux, Amazon 2, Java, Apache, Tomcat, hooked to an Oracle database. A lot of government agency runs on that, so that's really what I focused on and really try to delve down and trying to master that. Oh yeah, because but you got to think most people just put their credit card in. Most people just use the app. Most people don't understand what the underlying infrastructure is, right? Most people know Windows because they use it at home, right? So but I think even a lot of the government now, because especially from an Oracle perspective, it's getting so expensive. A lot of people are migrating, and AWS is making it super easy to migrate. So a lot of people going to MySQL or I'm a Postgres guy, right? Postgres, MySQL. AWS is pushing their DynamoDB, which is a NoSQL version of that. AWS has like 20 versions of databases, right? Then their other one is Aurora, which is their fork of MySQL and Postgres that they created to run extremely well in their cloud. So they're actually pushing Aurora. And next week, we're going to talk about DR sites and multiple region stuff in the database and failover and DR and which database should you pick, which region should you pick, NoSQL versus RDS from, they call it RTO and RPO, return of operations, and RPO, return of point operations, which how much data are you willing to lose in a 24-hour period, right? But we're going to get into that next week, so that's kind of on my thing. But no, I think, and just to kind of wrap it up, keep asking me questions though. I think from JM perspective is scripting is a good thing to have, because when you get over 10 of anything, to do that manually, over 10 EC2s, over 10 Tomcats, over 10 Tomcat over 10 Apache servers, over 10 IaaSs. You need to figure out how to script that too. And two is from a security perspective, I try to stop people from logging into boxes because that's how they get hacked, right? AWS has a service and Azure has a server. AWS is system manager. You could say, these are my web servers. It'll physically push your scripts on those boxes or software on those boxes and update it. You never log on those boxes. System managers does that for you remotely. What that helps is if your machine gets hacked, you were never on those boxes, so you can't get virus on those boxes. Nobody can log on those boxes, right? Because you're going through system manager. You're not physically on those boxes, right? So now I'm cutting my malware down, my ransomware down. And they call it my threat surface is small because you're not physically getting on those boxes. You putting your scripts in system manager, and system managers pushing it out on those boxes for you, right? So that's where you need to go, where you need to be. Can you push updates on machines through scripting? Yeah, what you're doing is system managers pushing your scripts on those boxes, then running them. Right. And I did a stream on that if you're bored. I did system manager. You go on a system manager, you say, this is my script. Each one of those boxes are tagged. So my web servers are tagged web servers. So it says on web server, run Tomcat. So it'll run my time scrap scripts and update them on there, right? So that's what system manager does. It pushes your script on there, then your script's going to run and says, oh, go out to the new Tomcat, pull it down, run it, right? Update it to the new version, delete the other one, right? Right. So your script is getting pushed on those boxes, then it runs your script on that box, right? So if you got 10 or 100, right, it's going to run the same script on all those boxes. Right. The cool thing is once system manager gets done, if it fails, it'll send you a message said, I did these 9. I don't know what's going on with that 10, right? Maybe that 10 didn't get configured. Maybe it missed a patch. Maybe it missed an update. But you can run on those boxes. Right. Then the cool thing is when you get it down, you can do all your work in an hour, right? If you got your scripting down and you got your patching down, you got your patch windows, all that stuff, right, is getting handled. So that's where you once again, like we talked about, there's levels to that. I'll put scripting if it's beginner, medium, and advanced. You start to get the upper medium when you really start scripting at a high level, right? When you advance, your scripting game is tight, right? So I'm trying to get my scripting game tight, but once again, you want to script those stuff up because you don't want to be physically logging into those boxes. Like once again, if you got a couple hundred boxes, you don't want to do that manually. I've done that before. That sucks, right? So I don't remember if something happened and we couldn't script, or I think something happened. So we had to log on those boxes individually and run some software and change some environment variables. You don't want to do that, man. You don't want to do that. So if an organization hosts a web server on AWS and it's hacked, is it more difficult for the hacker to pivot to the on-premise machine from the AWS service? It depends on how you got it set up. Hopefully, yes, it will be more harder to pivot because on a lot of our servers is usually you on-prem, you go on to AWS for something, and a lot of times coming back from those, you're only coming back on a couple ports, so you couldn't SSH or something. So, and two is you looking for certain tokens on machines, you looking for certain IP addresses. So yeah, so hopefully you set up your VPC. So even if they hacked on-prem, it's hard to get up to AWS, and even if they hacked on your AWS. But once again, it's how your architect set up your VPC, which is your networking, right? Are you looking for MFA? Do you have to come from a certain subnet from AWS to get to a certain subnet on-prem, right? Even though they hacked your AWS, but if they're not on the right VPN subnet, they can't even see your your on-prem routing, right? So hopefully you have that set up in your VPC and your networking, right? To make that harder, right? There's things called roles. You have to assume roles to be able to move to subnet and to be able to move on-prem, right? So even though if they hack, if they don't know what roles to assume, that will make it hard to get on-prem. So it really depends on how your VPC is set up, right? And hopefully we plan at that big boy level, so we're gonna make it hard for it to set up. And once again, I do government, so we got zero trust in, which is making it hard to go east and west, right? So that's the goal of zero trust networking. So once again, you got username, password, MFA. We got your IP address, so we know your machine. Then what session you're using to, right? So there's 3 or 4 layers of security that you would have to go through to pivot either way, on-prem to AWS and from AWS to on-prem, right? With that zero trust architecture. If you did, I did a video on I think AWS and zero trust. I did like 4 videos on that. Jam, if you want to look at that zero trust, I got a playlist on zero trust on my on my page. If you want to get on that zero trust, I got to put out my AWS in a playlist. That's gonna be next. Hanging out, JM. What else you got for me, JM? But yeah, I think scripting. And double check me. You women in Linux. I'm sure Tam will back me up. That scripting game, and I'm trying to figure out my next because I do corn shell. That's so outdated. It's good though because I'm comfortable with it. But I think Python is going to be my next scripting language that I'm going to trade corn shell in for Python. Once again, it's got the Bodo, and inside Bodo you can create VPCs, and that's what they're doing SDK to build networking and all that stuff. The cool thing is I can run that in a Lambda, which is a serverless infrastructure, and it'll spin up all the servers underneath and just use that for my scripting. So I think that's really what I'm going to start working on. Two is I just been doing minor scripting. Like I said, if I needed to update some, I spun up 10 web servers and I was playing around with System Manager. I got a System Manager in there and it shows you, and I talked about that, and that's AWS's service for patching, running scripts on multiple servers, Windows or Linux, and if you have multiple servers and what that would look like. So I came on at 12. Go check out my my video when I went live at 12. We were talking about Apple getting sued for air tags. See what JM got for me. With the WikiLeaks in 2010, how do different agencies are able to share information on each other effectively with the zero trust model? Each one's a little different. We use if you're talking about, let me go through a list. We used to move a lot of flat files, right? So if you move in flat files, right, we got VPN tunnel. We're actually using a public and private key within inside of VPN tunnel. We got tokens with sessions between 2 agencies. So you got to crack that VPN tunnel. We actually got the file encrypted. So if you even got to listen to it, you wouldn't be able to read it. Even if you stole it, you would actually have another encryption key, right? Because we got encryption at rest, encryption in transit, right? So we got the VPN tunnel in transit. The file is actually encrypted. Then inside that session, it's looking for a token, right? If you don't have that token, it's going to actually kill the session. So there's different ways to do it. Teams, Microsoft Teams, I can invite you in. Teams has DoD level encryption. We can share stuff inside of a work area within Teams, JM. So depending on the level of security organizations, there are a myriad. S3 bucket. If I'm in AWS, I can do an S3 bucket. give you access to that bucket, let you upload it to the bucket. That bucket has HTTPS, once again, encryption in transit. KMS, I can actually click a key on that bucket. So all the blocks in that S3 bucket will be encrypted. So if you stole that block out of AWS without the KMS key, you wouldn't be able to read it. So depending on your organization and level, there's different ways to do to secure information and how you move it. And part of that is that's why you rotate your keys, right? Somebody stole your keys and you rotate them every 30 days, right? If you rotate your keys, right, they couldn't read and they haven't read them after 90 days, right? Those keys will be invalidated. So there's different ways to do it, JM. And two is we don't want to get too carried away. Is what's the classification of the data we're trying to exchange, and that'll tell us what level of security we need to do from a zero trust model and what level of security we want to do to lock that down, right? So that's what we wanted to do. So most people get sloppy too. So, and I think that's why a lot of agencies, get hacked. And a lot of times when you have legacy stuff, it's hard to use your newer technology when you have legacy stuff. Right? That's the cool thing about going to AWS. It opens up you to so many new services if you can get up there with your legacy stuff. Right? One of my clients actually got up in AWS. They saved 50% in money, but they spent the 50% because they got much more security, much more better database, more secure database, better OS, better encryption, better everything, right? So they end up spending the same amount of money. They just got a ton of more features with the savings they got. So what else you got for me, Jam? I'm about to go get me a little lunch in a minute. Well, I guess it's almost dinner time. Give me a little dinner, trying to figure out what I'm gonna eat. PBO got to go on a diet, boy. 2022 was not nice to me. I got to get it together for 2023. Once again, I'm challenging all my homies. Keep It Techie has accepted. The challenge is we need to all put our 2023 technical goals. Mine is to get the CISSP in 2023. I'm very upset with myself. I should have got that in 2005. I was slipping. So I got to get at it. So that's my goal in 2023 is getting my CISP and try to figure out how to get in that cloud game a little bit. I'm going to go from probably compliance to engineering probably in 2023 maybe. I think the current organization, they got moves I can make. So everybody's moving to the cloud. So I think that's going to be one of my cloud. Try to get in that. That makes sense. Okay, that's cool, Jam. Hopefully I'm gonna start showing that a little more. And two, let me know. I like to drop those little gems, scripting, especially when you go to the big organizations. You want to get the bag scripting. You got to be able to script. Cool thing is I started off as a programmer, so scripting makes it a little easier for me when I program for 10 years before I start rotating into other stuff. Right. I started as an intern in 1988. I programmed for 3 years doing some insurance. Then I learned Oracle and I learned Oracle and Forms. That's Oracle's. Then I learned Java. Then I kind of ride that out for another 10, right? That was super hot. So I'm gonna start doing Java again. Shout out to B2B. He's gonna do a course on that. So I'll probably be the guinea pig for his course. I haven't told him that yet, but I'm helping write his course. That's part of my 2023 goals. Help the young guys. Help B2B with his course. Shout out Free Zone Lou. So shout out to that. So that's one of my goals. So I'm challenging everybody, especially the content creators. What's your goal? Mine is to get that CISSP in 2023. That's gonna hurt. I already can feel it. That's gonna hurt. So I'm hoping to get a couple more AWS certs and get on that CISP and then get on that DevOps and AWS and combine that with the CISP, right? Security, with DevOps, making a development environment is secure. But shout out to Free Zone Lou. Salute in the chat. Appreciate that. So once again, challenging. So mine is the CISP. Man, I gotta get some energy at 55. That's gonna hurt. That's all I got, man. So if you just now getting here, shout out to Free Zone Lou. Check out the replay. Like I said, I'm just trying to do a little more content, trying to do different things, still focusing on the AWS life. I think you need to learn the cloud. I picked the AWS cloud, but shout out, I got respect for Google. I got respect for Azure. Microsoft is killing it into the game. Oracle Cloud, Salesforce. I probably put Salesforce number 4. Get a little Oracle backing that up. Just a lot of it. So that's all I got. Everybody have a great weekend. It's over. Monday's here. Let's get up. Catching the beginning. Love the content. I appreciate it. I appreciate catching the beginning. Love the content. I appreciate it. So that's it. Everybody figure out what they want to do in 2023. This ain't magic, man. I've been in the game for 30 plus years. Every year I got to pick something. I'm trying to get into the cloud mastery because that's going to be 10 years and I'll be 65, 66. I'm retire out the game. So I need something to get me to the next 10, right? So cloud, right now I do compliance. I hope to do more engineering in the future. That's my goal for 2023. Get that CISP and keep getting better in that AWS. Once again, start labbing a little more, getting more comfortable, right? Shout out to JM. I've been actually scripting a little more, so that's why I know, two is I worked on production system, and you got to script on those production systems. I'll take that back. You don't have to script. It just makes your life a lot easier, right? Especially when you're building. A lot of times you're building multiple environments you're doing the same thing for different development teams, right? You're doing same things for different divisions and organizations, even startups, right? They doing the same thing for different customers, right? This is an environment and each customer is paying for the same environment, but they don't want to share environments, right? So they want you to spin up another environment, right? So hopefully you're going to spin up a duplicate, right? So you can patch them the same, all the versions are the same. So when you do support, you don't have to say, oh, this version 3 and this is 8, right? So hopefully you want them identical so they're easy to patch, easy to keep track of, right? And you can build them like a cookie cutter, right? You want them to be, as they say, you want them to be cattle and not pets, right? Right. You take care of pets, cattle, right? You just handle them, right? So that's the theory behind it. Once again, I'm out. Everybody have a great weekend. Check out my playlist I got on there. I got a few different ones. Everybody have a nice weekend. Let's get this money started and figure out what your goals is for 2023. It's not magic, man. We got to get out here and work. Everybody have a nice